Scott Bessent this morning. Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's been a while. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Joe.
Market is trading higher today, and we did see what was welcomed yesterday, and that is a bounce from some of the lows and even a higher close on the NASDAQ. One of our guests, Mr. Secretary, earlier mentioned the resumption of the trade put, and not coincidentally, it coincided with your trip to Florida over the weekend, where reportedly you were stressing that the market needed to hear that negotiations about these tariffs were in play. Lo and behold, we did see a bounce. Is that a fair assessment? Do you think that's what happened?
Well, it's not a fair assessment of what happened over the weekend. I went down to see President Trump, as I do many weekends, and I can tell you it's all President Trump's decision, and he had a view on after Liberation Day that we should go into quiet mode and let our partners think about the kind of the shock and awe that he presented. And over those following few days from April 2nd, we had I think we're up to 70 countries contact the White House for how to come and negotiate. So, I would say that the negotiations are the result of the massive inflow of inbound calls to come and negotiate. It had nothing to do with the market.
I think the market took some solace, though, in kind of a change in the perspective. Just last week, we were hearing no negotiations. Now, we're talking about, you mentioned 70 different countries. We're approaching, Japan, I guess, was early in terms of placing a call to the White House. And now, in earnest, you and U.S. Trade Representative are going to begin negotiations with Japan. I think that some of the stability of the markets, there's no doubt that's what I think helped massage the markets to some extent.
Well, look, Joe, my my advice on April 2nd to our trading partners was not to panic, don't escalate, and then we will see where President Trump is after a period of days or weeks. The response was overwhelming, so it was after a period of days, and he decided that it would be a good time to begin negotiating. The Japanese, very good actors. The president had a very good call yesterday with the Japanese Prime Minister that led to these negotiations. And look, the Japanese are military partners, they're economic partners. We have a substantial imbalance with them, and I'm sure that they are as anxious as we are to get this remedied.
At Sutter, comebacks never stop. Whether you're scoring goals or achieving new ones, our doctors specialize in joint pain, sports injuries, and more. And our hospitals and surgery centers, recognized for excellence in knee and hip replacements, help you recover faster. Elite orthopedic care trusted by you and teams like the AFC. A whole team on your team. Sutter Health.
Mr. Secretary, we spoke yesterday with the Peter Navarro, and he described his view on these things as it's not enough to get to zero tariffs. You have to take down all the non-tariff barriers that exist as well. His proposal, as he's written about today, is to get rid of the VAT, the value-added tax, on top of a lot of other things. That is what it would take for us to reach any sort of a settlement with you.
Not bringing jobs back to America necessarily, though that could be an offshoot of what happens. I'm trying to understand from your perspective whether these really are negotiations, they're not negotiations, what success at the end of the day actually looks like.
Well, Andrew, lot to unpack there, and let's just go through it piece by piece. That if we put up a tariff wall, the ultimate goal would be to bring jobs back to the U.S. But in the meantime, we will be collecting substantial.
You can speak directly to the CEOs and business leaders who are watching this broadcast, along with perhaps policy leaders, and come on board or online.
Yes, so Andrew, that I think that may be what some of the countries are saying in public, but I can tell you I've seen the call list at the White House, and I spent the weekend talking to CEOs and investment bankers, and that's exactly what's happening.
The Secretary of the
Some willingness. President Trump believes in trade. He wants to have fair trade. Wasn't involved in the calculations of the numbers, but what I can tell you is that we can see from these huge surpluses that some of these countries have. You know, they've accumulated these gigantic surpluses over the years. That has to tell all of us that there are imbalances. And again, whether those imbalances are from the actual tariffs or non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, or the state-favored funding, it's very difficult to disentangle, but those big surpluses tell me that there is a large imbalance, and President Trump is committed for the American worker to fixing those imbalances.
I'm going to let you go, Mr.
I
Secretary.
think we will see the shapes and contours of the bill in the coming weeks and days, but I have been very impressed by how quickly this is moving forward, and this will be the certainty on this. You know, if we go back, everyone wants to talk about, oh, the tariffs are causing uncertainty. The thing I can tell you is getting this tax bill done quickly will give industry and American households incredible certainty.
It just seems anathema to the whole intent of the original bill back in 2017. And I mean, tariffs are like taxes to some extent, Mr. Secretary. So raising taxes there and then raising taxes the top rate. So you won't dismiss that. You won't say that that's not on the table. That is possibly on the table. Raising the top rate.
I'm saying that we are negotiating. The House and the Senate are moving very, very, very quickly on everything.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, thanks for your time this morning. We'll let you go. We appreciate it.
Good, thanks, Joe.
Did you receive a 1099 and want an affordable way to file your taxes? Look no further. With Free Tax USA, your federal filing is always free, and state returns are under $20, no matter your tax situation. Our advanced features, like W-2 imports and IRS e-file, make tax season a breeze. Free Tax USA focuses
From Kentucky, how we get here? How did the Republican Party get here, Senator?
How did we all get here? I mean, the whole debate is so fundamentally backwards and upside down. It's based on a fallacy. And the fallacy is this, that somehow in a trade, someone must lose. That somehow when you trade with someone, there's a loser and someone's artificial accounting, and it makes it look like a bad thing. But you have to ask yourself, is trade good or bad? And if you look at the trade deficit, in times of a recession, the trade deficit goes down. So if the tariffs push us into recession, we could reduce the trade deficit because we're all buying less stuff. We have to get back to the fundamentals of, is trade good or is trade bad?
Senator, you are maybe getting some support and some praise from Democrats, but the support and praise from Republicans, you're saying that you're getting it, but these are individuals that you don't even want to be on the record for saying that. Is that fair to say?
It's a quiet whisper, and people come up to me in the hall. You know how in Atlas Shrugged, they would come up and say, "Who is John Galt?" They whisper in my ear, "Free trade is good. Keep going, keep going." But they don't want to say it because of the politics of it. And look, when I put free trade articles on my Twitter account, I get mobbed. I mean, I get what they call ratioed. I get more comments than likes, which they say isn't good. But we have to have this debate, and people have to understand that trade is between individuals, not countries, and it's a false accounting. So I'm committed to this. I'll keep talking about it. And there's one graph, if you look at it, and it has trade. Trade for the last 70 years went up exponentially, international trade, but so did GDP per capita. We get wealthy with trade, not without trade. It's such a fundamental debate that it's worth having.
And I get all that. So it's almost like it was almost like a creep. Okay, what about some targeted tariffs? Okay, well, let's do it this way. Well, what about China? And then there's fentanyl, and you could sort of see the creep, mission creep, or whatever you call it. Now we're at across the board tariffs, and even Republicans that in the past would have called themselves Reagan Republicans are kind of going along with it. But how does it end?
Tariffs, like sanctions, are good until they're applied. Once they're applied, they're of no value and they're a detriment to the economy. But if you threaten tariffs and you get other people to lower their tariffs, you can say, oh, this is wonderful. If you threaten sanctions and you can get a country to change their behavior, that's wonderful. If you have them in place, they're only of value if you can remove them. So if you can remove tariffs and lower tariffs and get more equal tariffs, that's good. But we have to start from talking about the truth. One of the things they say with Canada is, oh, there's a 270% tariff on dairy products going from the U.S. into Canada. Well, you know what the real tariff is? 0. That's a big difference between what the truth is. So there's a certain amount of goods, dairy goods, that go to Canada every year, and they go at 0%. If we exceed a certain amount, there's this ridiculous 270% tariff, but we've never encountered it. And the USMC renegotiated it and raised the level that's under 0. Trump should be congratulated for USMC raising the amount of dairy that goes in at 0. But we have to have an honest debate. We can't go around saying that there's a 270% tariff when that's not really the truth.
Senator, we had Ray Dalio on talking about how he understands why we got to this point. There are sections of the country that have gotten hollowed out by free trade. People who lost their jobs, industries that left towns upended. What could and should we do to help those who have been hurt by free trade if it's not tariffs?
The middle class, if and when they've been hollowed out, have been hollowed out by free spending, by debt and inflation. So the last 4 years were difficult for the middle class, and they lost ground. The average family income went down because they lost purchasing power. Their wages didn't keep up with inflation. Inflation comes from debt. It's nothing to do with free trade. Trade is proportional to wealth.
What happened, Senator, over the last 50 years, losing 60,000 factories? What should we have done about that? You can see where the president's coming from.
Yes and no. If you look at the last 60 or 70 years of household income, the lower class under 50,000 shrunk slightly, the middle class shrunk slightly, and you know where they all went? To the upper class. over $100,000 category tripled in constant dollars over the last 70 years. The truth, it's just, we have to discuss the truth. The middle class shrunk slightly, but they became richer. So, you know, there's so many good facts on this. Steven Pinker's written about it. Humanprogress.org has written about this. We have to work on facts, and it's the job really to point out fallacies. It is a fallacy that people have gotten poor. The world is richer than it's ever been. 100,000 people leave poverty every day. I mean, it's extraordinary, the phenomenon of capitalism, but trade is an integral part of capitalism. Trade is just voluntary association. Policy that is going to make us lose our wealth. I have a retirement account too. I want my retirement account to stay there, and I think tariffs is going to decimate it.
Okay, so Senator, I got maybe a difficult question. If you were to advise the leaders of foreign countries that now have to negotiate with the president, what would you tell them to do? Would you tell them to ratchet things up? Because ultimately you think these tariffs are a bad thing, and maybe that would force the president to stand down? Do you think the president looks at the market and says that he has less leverage, more leverage? How would you think about it in that context? And then separately, I'll ask you later what you think the CEO community that's thinking about where they're supposed to invest and what they're supposed to do in this moment are supposed to do.
Right. You know, I'm fundamentally an American. It's hard for me to take the side of another country, but like a CFO has to do that. So if you're a CFO or a Treasury Secretary of a country, you have to do it. When you argue for a trade war is based on emotions, not facts. So the trade war won't make them richer. The trade war will say, damn it, we're going to get even. We'll get even with those SOBs, but it doesn't make the foreign country richer either. The smartest thing actually would just be to keep your tariffs low and let the U.S. founder in their problems. But the thing is, that's not what typically happens. Emotions take over, and right now is ratcheting up. But I can tell you this, if people care about the freedom of those people in Taiwan, they shouldn't want to cut off all trade with China. At the moment there is no trade with China, that is the moment that Taiwan will be taken by force.
Senator,
the main thing that keeps Taiwan as free is trade.